Yeah, so think of starting your first startup as buying your first car, right? You're going to bump it everywhere. You're going to crash it a few times, not too hard, but still, you're going to learn a lot.
Welcome back to another episode of the Revenue Reimagined podcast. We are so lucky to have with us today one of my friends, arguably the co-founder and CEO of what I think is the best, and I'm going to pigeonhole it, he will tell me not to, conversational intelligence platforms out there. But we have Anis Bennaceur with us, who is the co-founder and CEO of Attention, was also formerly the co-founder and CEO of Mixer, where he had an exit, and did a good amount of growth for a small little company some of you might have heard of called Tinder. That is not where Dale and I met. But Anis, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
We're glad to have you. I mean, we got to put up with Dale, but we're glad to have you here.
It is true. It is true. How's everything going, Anis? Appreciate you joining us.
Good. Thank you. I'm in Miami right now, based in New York, but in Miami at a customer's office for the day.
You should go visit Adam.
I know.
We already talked about this, Dale, because you were late.
Good. Yeah. Awesome. So one of the things we love to talk about with founders is what's the origin story of Attention? Like, why did you start it? What was the genesis of it? So tell us a bit about the origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. So before Attention, I founded another startup called Mixer. It was a professional network for creatives. He has LinkedIn for people in the creative space. And at one point, we're scaling all of our sales and hired a head of sales over at Mixer. We were selling subscriptions. So he has LinkedIn job postings, but for our own platform, to companies like Capital One, Square, Havas Media, and so on. And when we were selling to all these customers, especially when the pandemic hit, we all started selling via Zoom. It was impossible to understand what was happening within our deals. Our CRM was always empty. There were so many challenges that we dealt with as a startup, and we started to look into how we could fix those problems, right? And by trying to stitch things together at the time, we realized that this could be a product. And at the same time, I met with my biggest competitor, the founder of a startup called Swipecast, and that guy is Matthias, my current co-founder today. When we met, I realized that he had the exact same challenges, despite us being sitting at the different side of the tables. And we realized that we were both trying to solve the same challenges while not being at the same companies. So we decided to start Attention together a year later. And the reason why we started was to fix our problems within our previous startups.
So I'm biased. I am a longtime Attention user. I think it is, as I said, the best platform out there for a plethora of reasons, other than the fact that it records my calls, which I think is like such a minute portion of what you do. But one of the things that intrigues me and intrigued me to work with you, Anis, is that you're a multi-time founder, right? Like, this isn't your first rodeo. And I think a lot of first-time founders, they struggle with how to get it right in that first build, what to do, what not to do, because there's so many assumptions and what industry best practices, or VCs telling you go hire 15 sales reps and just sell. Talk to us, as you're, in startup number 2, what are some of these assumptions that you've kind of said, fuck it, I'm not going to do this the traditional way, and I'm going to do this my way, that is allowing you to see the growth that you're seeing at Attention?
Yeah, so think of starting your first startup as buying your first car, right? You're going to bump it everywhere. You're going to crash it a few times, not too hard, but still, you're going to learn a lot. And you're going to be a better driver, and then you get a second nicer car. It's exactly the same, right? Over at Mixer, especially, it was a bootstrap business. We had to think very deeply about how to grow our business profitably in the most efficient possible ways. And after doing that for 6 years, it makes you a warrior, right? And also B, there were tough times where I had to eat just pasta with butter every single day.
My kid loves pasta with butter.
It's his favorite. Mine too. Maybe they're entrepreneurs. Maybe they can just work in the entrepreneur space.
you go through really tough times, and at that point, you actually just start thinking with the most intensity and passion about how to run your startup. And that those are things that not only from a best practice perspective, but also how to think about things perspective, you end up being a better second time founder. Some of the things were uh, get to product market fit before you hit the accelerator on growth. And when I spoke with Matthias before we started Attention, he had the exact same lesson. We sat over coffee and I asked him, hey, what are the top 10 lessons that you learned from your first startup? And he said, hit the accelerator on growth after you reach PMF. That was the biggest one, right? And then there are other things which included hire excellent talent and don't be afraid to pay over market prices to get the right types of people, because the cost of a mishire will kill your company. So about 7 out of those 10 were the exact same. And today, basically the way we operate is we really try to go from first principles. We think, especially with AI, the world is changing. There are so many, hypotheses that have to be questioned. And so, how do you go back to first principles? How do you try to operate differently? And this is how we spend 99% of our time just trying to think. We every morning we come up with shower thoughts about, hey, maybe we should try to do these things differently, and that might create different results. Um, when it comes to VCs, at the end of the day, we have a great relationship with our VCs, ENIAC, and whenever we walk into a meeting, I feel like we both learn from each other. It's not just us learning from them, but also us teaching them things about our discoveries, and that has been a great relationship. And at the end of the day, I think that's how most founder relationships should be with our VCs.
I love that. So you go through, so you talked about dealing with setbacks and having those challenges. Share one moment in the journey, whether Attention or even earlier, that things didn't go as planned, and the navigation that you did to change that setback into a setup and lessons you learned.
Yeah, of course. I think in order to be successful, you have to iterate as many times as possible and as quickly as possible. And so I'll just take the example with Attention, where in order to get initial early strong customer traction, you need to get to the best early product as possible. And so initially, when building Attention, we were thinking about two things: A, real-time sales coaching, and B, filling up your CRM. We started with real-time sales coaching, and within 4 to 8 weeks, putting this in the hands of users, we realized that it didn't have as strong as a product market fit than filling up the CRM. So within those 8 weeks, we said to ourselves, you know what, let's just actually just put 100% of our efforts into filling your Salesforce or your HubSpot based on what's happening in those conversations. And that's where very quickly our users said, hey, I love this, and started giving us a lot more feedback instead of going radio silent on us, right? And so that early setback just got us to pivot very quickly and just put all of our efforts into something that was going to have higher PMF.
So product market fit, PMF, is arguably the single most important thing you need as a founder in a startup. Dale and I talk about it all the time, all day, with multiple founders that are clients or aren't clients every single day. And you did something kind of interesting, and I'd love to know your thought process here. Like, you're in a really hyper competitive space, right? Like, you compete against people that are very well known, that have very big brands, and you're winning. What made you decide to go into that space and compete against the big boys? And how are you distinguishing and changing your go-to-market motion to win against them when no one else has been able to do that?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Believe it or not, I have no idea of what competitor platforms look like. And that allowed us to just build from first principles, as I was saying earlier, and just trying to understand. The way we've been building is just talk to customers, identify what's missing for them, what are the biggest gaps, and build, right? And so that allowed us to just keep building. At the end of the day, what Paul Graham says is just ignore your competitors most startups just die by suicide instead of anything else. So that's how we've been building. Just talk to your customers, understand what is their single biggest pain point, and build on that. And at the end of the day, that's how we've been building our product and ignoring every single competitive feature. Just and that's worked out for us, right? Just keep releasing in public. Whenever we have a new feature, just we release it very publicly on LinkedIn. We get people very excited, and then we keep selling. And we've always ignored competition.
I think that's super important because I think you can always try to figure out the me too, or I got to get a different feature, or what's that feature functionality. Whereas if you do it from a mindset of what the industry is asking for without having bias towards a product that's already in the market, it's super important. I think too many companies try to do me too following up versus like something that is going to change the trajectory of the market, which is the same thing when you're looking to grow the company. Like from a go-to-market perspective, you could be like, we should do it just because XYZ company did it. But the growth hack that you guys are doing in the go-to-market is like super interesting to us. So talk to us a little bit about your growth hacks and the thought process in growth hacking your go-to-market.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I'll just add to what you said that I think that most companies don't even really know what their customers need and try to build, feature parity with their competition. And my co-founder Matthias always said, hey, if you just try to figure out feature parity, by the time you get there, your competitors will be far ahead in front of you, right? So we just try to build just listening to our customers and ignoring whatever else is happening, within competition. Now, when it comes to growth hacking, the way I like to call it is growth stacking, right? You have a lot of different funnels of acquisition, and you have to run as many experiments as possible. So you go with one funnel, you end up figuring out that it works really well. You keep going on it, and you double down on it. And by the time you have everything automated, you add the second stack of growth funnel, and the third one, and so on. And so in the early days, we started selling just, doing LinkedIn cold outbound. And because I had a pretty good LinkedIn profile, people were interested in talking to me. So that was a good first funnel. Then we added LinkedIn posting. I would just post very publicly about our features, and that would just resonate very well with the market and get us a ton of leads. And then we added cold outbound via emails, and then we added ads, and then we added a lot of different funnels, and we just doubled down on whatever's winning. Now, when it comes to growth hacking, I could talk about this for ages, but the main thing is try to think about what really works at a manual level, right? How you reach out to a person just manually, and then you try to think about how you can replicate those things using AI, not the opposite. What I see in the market there is a lot of people try to think, hey, what can AI do at scale? But you know what? If your messaging sucks and you do it with AI at scale, it's always going to suck. So
you're just going to have scaled shitty messaging.
Exactly. Yep. And people are going to hate you. So just think about how you can write something very compelling and then replicate that very compelling message. And so when my reps joined Attention, the first thing I had them do is, hey, you're going to write your first 200 cold emails manually. We're going to figure out what emails worked out really well, and then we'll start replicating them with AI.
I love that.
Worked out really well.
I love that. Growth hacking through growth stacking. I like it.
It's funny when you talk about it. Like, there's so many startups out there, big and small, that want to compare themselves to others or focus on what others are doing and how you find that parity. And I'll even admit, like, I'm guilty of that, right? Like, I sent Dale a text this weekend over someone that arguably competes with us with some snide ass comment that I made. And Dale was like, why are you even wasting the energy on this? Like, go back to fucking building. And don't consume yourself with it. And it took me a minute, because my initial reaction anytime Dale criticizes me is to tell him that he's wrong, which he usually is. But in this case, it was like, you're right. Like, what do I care? Because if I'm so focused on what they are or are not doing, what I'm not doing is building our business. Or I'm just trying to focus on the people that they're speaking to, which may or may not be the people we speak to. So I love that you kind of talk about how that's not the guiding principle and that you don't focus on the competitors of the world. But Anis, I'd imagine as successful as attention is, like, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, right? Like, there's got to be times where you look back, something was going wrong, something was about to break, and you're like, shit, that was that critical inflection point, right? Like, I made a decision and it changed the trajectory of either attention or Mixer, to be honest, because what we're trying to do is speak to founders who just are going through this and don't know how. I'd love to talk through what one of those decisions or inflection points was, where you look back and you're like, this changed the trajectory of the company for better or for worse? Because the follow-up is going to be, what would you have done differently?
Yeah.
Ever feel like keeping your CRM updated with call notes is a nightmare? You're not alone. Most sales leaders would rate their CRM hygiene a 4 out of 10. Badly maintained CRMs lead to inaccurate data, missed opportunities, and a messy sales pipeline. Not ideal, right? Introducing Attention, your sales rep's personal Iron Man suit. It transforms CRM upkeep, automating it with AI, and freeing your reps to sell, not enter data. Attention fills your CRM with a single click, drafts custom follow-ups, and gives real-time assistance. Isn't it time your CRM worked for you? Ready to upgrade your sales? Visit www.attention.tech.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Most of mine are. I'm sorry you have to deal with Dale's questions.
So I would say that either for product or for growth, every single day we think, I think what really changes everything for us as founders, but also as a team, is that we think about and very deeply about our business every single time. We question every single hypothesis, and it could be during the weekend or after work hours. We always come back and regroup the next days with, hey, I just had this shower thought, right? That's really important because that shows how involved everyone is with the business. Now, when it comes to rethinking those hypotheses and kind of fixing whatever breaks, we operate very quickly, right? Like, I see that, let's say, in the last 4 weeks, someone from my team has not been selling the right way, has been doing something wrong. You know what? I'm not gonna give it a quarter to fix it. We're gonna fix it within the next 2 to 4 weeks. That's how quickly we have to iterate, and if within 4 weeks these things have not been fixed, and we don't focus on a million things, we focus on one single thing that person has to change in order to improve things, right? And so at the end of the day, if you force your team to be in the mindset of improving 1% every single day and looking back into how they can make things much better, then at that point you have a winning team. When I go back into the example of pivoting in our early days and putting more of our efforts into CRM hygiene instead of real-time coaching, we made that decision within 4 to 6 weeks. We collected the feedback from users. We realized that they were not as passionate as they were, and also sales were not going as fast as we wished they went. So very quickly, Matthias and I sat down and we said, hey, you know what? We already have this infrastructure. The only thing we have to do, this low-hanging fruit, is capturing these transcripts and leveraging AI to fill up your CRM. And we validated this with customers. We said, hey, this is how we're going to do. We're going to first sell, then we're going to build very quickly and ship, and then we're going to iterate. And we did that, and that allowed us to move very quickly. Always validate things with your customers. Try to sell it. Try to see if people are willing to spend money to based on whatever idea you have. And then if you're able to do it very quickly and you see kind of like their sparkle in their eyes, you're going to be able to be successful.
Yeah, 100%. And so going off of that trend, I heard something from a leader one time that basically said, and it doesn't really matter if it's a startup or not, but I think it's more relevant in a startup. If you don't wake up every day trying to put yourself out of business, like, someone's going to put you out of business, right? And so what are you guys doing from a future perspective? Because you're delivering for what's happening. But what do you guys do as an organization or as a leadership team, or do you do it as a leadership team to wake up every morning to put yourself out of business?
I think when you were bootstrapping a business for 6 years, you had that just ends up being muscle memory, right? And so my biggest thought today is how do I make sure that everyone in the team is bought into the same mindset. And so our team is in office in New York, and we make sure that within our conversations, we build this every single day within their mindset, and we get them to think exactly the same way as we do, which is, hey, read this article, listen to this podcast, try to think about what they're saying, and try to see how it can affect the way you're doing things, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is just Matthias and I, my co-founder, we text every single hour, outside of work hours. He's the last text I send before going to bed, and the first text I see when I wake up in the morning before going to the office. And it's just kind of like having this echo chamber of us talking about these things all the time just makes us think about this with a lot of obsession. The last thing, and that's kind of actually the most important one, is always talk to your customers. So you have to make sure that you're taking the right feedback. How do you differentiate signal from noise, right? And what we kind of finally figured out is there a subset of our customers who can actually live in the future. It's kind of like 10% of that customer base, and those customers will actually talk to them very frequently. We'll get their ideas on certain things. We'll actually listen to them a lot more than some other ones. A lot of customers will ask you to build table stakes things, right? And if there's a massive need, we'll end up building them. But we save 50% of our engineering resources listening to those customers that live in the future, and we try to validate things with them.
That's the important part. Like, out of everything you were just saying, like, I think tactically, if founders are listening, save 50% of your engineering resources for the customers that are actually deriving future value for your organization.
Yeah, it's the age-old adage, right? Is it loud or is it important? Just because someone is screaming that they want this feature doesn't mean that it's important and that it's going to be something that's going to benefit the larger customer base that you should be spending engineering time on. It could just be something that one person wants. I love the fact that you guys are the first and last text. I'm now gonna text Dale every morning when I wake up, and I'm gonna send him a good night text every single night before I go to sleep. And he thinks I'm kidding, and he's shaking his head, but I'm gonna start sending him good night texts every single night.
Until I put them on Do Not Disturb every night.
Something tells me I'm in your favorites. How do you, Anis, when you're interviewing, and this is something I think a lot of founders struggle with, right? Like I probably field 4 to 6 calls a week from founders about interviewing. How do you, as a startup leader, find the right talent that's going to cut it in the startup space? Because, and I'll take heat for this, not everyone is made for the startup space. Let's just be real.
Yeah, of course. Two things. A, I filter for quest for excellence. That's the biggest thing. Have they proven in their lives in the past or in the interview today that they're on a quest for excellence? Are they trying to be the top 1% or 0.1% in what they do? And if they're obsessed with their current job, their current role, whatever they're doing at being the actual best in the world, then that's going to be really good, right? The second thing, and they have to think about it with the same obsession as a world-class chess player. That's how I view it. You have to always kind of think about strategies and things to always keep self-improving. The second thing, and again, I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this one, is I try not to get people who speak too much about work-life balance. If you care about work-life balance, go work at Google or Meta or one of those great companies. If you come and work with us, you have to give it your 120%. You have to work 10 to 12 hours a day, and you have to also be available on weekends when I message you. I know a lot of people might not want this, and that's okay. They can work for other companies, but I want people who are obsessed with their jobs. And I think so. The very first job I had was in mergers and acquisitions. back in France, and I was working insane weeks, right? And that just made me who I am today. So I want people who are just obsessed with their jobs, obsessed with being the best at what they do.
We are huge with Give to Get at Revenue Reimagined. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is giving back to our audience. And my understanding is you've been gracious enough to give away something that you'd like to share with a member of our audience. So I know I didn't do that in as scripted as a voice as my lovely co-host normally does. But what have you decided to share with our folks, man?
Yeah, of course. So one of the things that I was talking about earlier was being world-class at one thing. And that one thing that I think I'm world-class at is growth hacking. So anyone who wants to get a one-on-one session with me on growth hacking, I'll be more than happy to give that away for free.
Nice. Very nice. I might want to sit in on that, because I think what people don't realize is whether you are a two-person special ops team that's building out support for founders, whether you are a venture-backed company, whether you are a public company, growth hacking is something that we could all use. What do you say we jump into some rapid fire?
Go for it.
All right. If you weren't in tech, you can't work in tech anymore, what profession are you going to go do?
Well, if I had to redo all of my life, I would probably try to be a rock star. That would have been my life dream, being Julian Casablancas from The Strokes. Otherwise, I would have probably done. Does VC count as an answer?
Sure.
All right. Well, VC.
Cool. Nice. I love it.
What's the most used emoji in your work chats?
The lightning bolt out of the attention logo.
Nice. It's a good one.
That is a good one. Anis, what's the most unusual item that we could find on your desk back in the office in New York?
Candies.
That's not unusual. What's your candy of choice?
Sweet tarts robes, cherry or watermelon. My mom or my girlfriend would kill me if they heard that.
Nice.
Checkers or chess?
Chess.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Strategy. Other than the Revenue Reimagined podcast, what's your favorite book or podcast related to entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I've been listening a lot. Actually, so Revenue Reimagined is within my top 3. Nice. I love I was going to send you a screenshot of that within my...
We don't even pay you to say that shit.
We did have someone send it to us. We were number 1 in their Spotify list.
Yeah. I would say cool. Harry Stebbings' podcast is great. 20 Minutes to VC, I think it's called. That one is also within my top 3. Within books, I would say I loved Amp It Up by Frank Slootman. I read it recently.
Awesome. Last one, dream vacation destination.
And I want to be on a beach and just like clear my mind and not do anything.
Love that.
Hence why you're in Florida. Nice. Anis, thank you so much for joining, man. Where can folks find you? Where can folks find more information about Attention? Shameless plug time, sir.
Yeah, of course. So our website is attention.tech, TECH as in technology. You can add me on LinkedIn. Please do not email me. My inbox is destroyed. But add me on LinkedIn. Follow me on LinkedIn. Anis Bennaceur. You'll find me easily there.
Awesome. Anis, thank you so much for joining. We appreciate it. If you have not checked out Attention, go check it out. I said it at the start. I said it in the middle. I'll say it again. It is the best platform out there. I do not make any money saying this. Go check out the platform. It's really super cool. Thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you, guys.